are, chapter 12 of People of Sparks. My dogs. I think it's time to go for you-know-what. It's only 1:30. I don't know. I've heard from other people that their dogs don't want to go. My dogs are doing the opposite. Every time I'm sitting down, which isn't all that often because I am still working, they want to go for something. Later, okay? Yeah, Dickie's there wagging his tail. Okay, chapter 12 is Caspar arrives with a surprise. Do you remember who Caspar is? Everybody? It's the brother of Torn. And Torn's been waiting for him. I wonder, with a surprise, I wonder what the surprise could be. I don't know. Maybe he found other people. Maybe, obviously, he brought something really cool. Dickie, why don't you come on up? I brought Dickie's toy up, hoping that maybe Dickie would join us. I don't know. Okay, but you want to hear chapter 12. And I'm hearing from parents that you guys are keeping up or got your own copies. Kindle, Lolly has it. I know Brandon's been reading it. Okay, chapter 12. Lena was sweeping the floor of the kitchen when she heard the thump and shuffle of hooves outside. There was a shout in a man's voice. Hello, where is everyone? And then a shriek from inside the house, running footsteps, and Torn's voice screaming, Caspar, Caspar, you're home. Lena flung down the broom and dashed to the door. There was Torn, clamped onto the front of a very large man, who was rumpling Torn's hair and thumping him on the back. Behind the man was his truck, an especially large one, piled high with boxes and crates, pulled behind two huge oxen with curved horns. They stood breathless, breathing noisily, their sides going in and out. Well, my small brother, said Caspar, glad to see me? Yes, said Torn. He unwrapped his arms from around his brother's trunk and gazed up at his face. You were gone so long this time. Hello. Not now. Not now. I had to extend my route, said Caspar. Quite far, in fact, quite far. The work of a roamer gets harder. Look, did you see what she just did? She took my arm and pushed it. The work of a roamer gets harder every year. Lena could see Caspar's resemblance to his brother Torn. They both had the same small eyes and the same wispy light brown hair, but while Torn was narrow, Caspar was wide. He had a wide, round, rosy pink face with a glistening round chin. It was almost a babyish-looking face, except for the tiny mustache on the upper lip, twisted at both ends into points. I have to be very honest, those types of mustaches I don't care for. Let's see. There we go. Dr. Hester, who had been picking peas, came out from the side of the house. Welcome back, traveler, she said. Aunt Hester, cried Caspar, flinging his arms wide. He stood that way while Dr. Hester walked toward him, and when she came close, he gave her a hug that lifted her feet in their dusty slippers off the ground. Don't do that, she said, her face squashed against Caspar's shoulder. He dropped her back down. Can't help it, he said. You're light as a feather. I'm not either, said the doctor, rubbing her neck. You're just showing off your muscles. Well, said Caspar, it's true that being a roamer builds muscles. He made a fist. Come here, Dickie. And flexed his meaty arm back and forth. Heavy things to lift, you know. Some exceedingly heavy. There, my boy. Out near the Camp Range foothills a few months ago, I got stuck in the mud and had to lift the whole back end of the truck, which was loaded at the time with. Torn jumped up and down at Caspar's side. Did you bring me a surprise? Caspar looked startled. A surprise? Yes, the way you always do. A surprise for me. Okay, too much. Dickie now. I'm waiting. There's my little mud. For a second, Lena felt sorry for Torn. The look on his face was so hopeful. She had a feeling that Caspar was more important to Torn than Torn was to Caspar. Caspar laughed. He had the oddest laugh. He, all in one high squeaky note. It was hardly a sound of pleasure at all. Well, he said, as it happens, I did bring one surprise. It's more of a surprise for everyone, though. He looked back toward his truck. "Are you there?" he called. "Ooh." "Right here," answered a gruff voice. From behind the truck stepped a woman almost as big as Caspar himself, a massive tree trunk of a woman with swirls and tangles of red-brown hair falling to her shoulders. She was dressed in faded blue pants and a huge brown shirt. She looked at them, smiling slightly. Her eyes were blue and fierce. "This is Maddie," said Caspar. "She's my roaming partner." From Torrin there was silence. Dr. Hester held out her hand and said, "Welcome." The big woman pumped the doctor's hand firmly up and down 3 times, and then Dr. Hester glanced toward the house and saw Lena standing in the doorway. "Caspar," she said, turning back to him, "have you heard about what's happened since you've been gone? About the people who came here from from the underground city?" "I heard some tale like that," said Caspar. "Lena is one of them," Dr. Hester said. "Come here, Lena." Lena walked out toward Caspar, who squinted at her and then thrust a hand into the pocket of his pants and pulled out a pair of slightly bent glasses, which he put on. He peered at her through their cracked lenses as she approached. When she got close, he held out an enormous hand. Lena shook it. "Underground, eh?" said Caspar. The cloud of glasses made his eyes look bigger and dimmer. "Some sort of mole people? But you've got no fur." He laughed his squeaky laugh again. "Hee, hee, hee." Lena smiled politely at this stupid joke. Something about Caspar seemed to be slightly off, she thought. "Lena's sister, Poppy, is with us as well," Dr. Hester went on, "and their guardian, Mrs. Murdo." During all this, Torrin had been standing very still. His narrow face had closed down. His eyes looked like tiny stones, and his mouth was pinched small. So is that a description of a happy person? Not really. He was staring at Maddie. Suddenly, he cried, "But I'm supposed to be your partner." Caspar blinked at him as if he'd already forgotten he was there. "You?" he said. "You're much too young." "I'm almost 11, Torrin yelled. "I'm big enough." Hi, Dickie. "Not quite, little brother," Caspar said. He grinned at Maddie, who gazed back at him calmly. She was like a big rock, Lena thought. Her face didn't move. "Hi, can you say hi to the kids, Mr. Tubby?" "Hi. You can go for a walk later, not right now." "Sorry." Shoot. Torrin scowled. "Don't call me little," he shouted. He turned and ran toward the house. Caspar watched him go, lifting his eyebrows slightly. "It's hard for children to accept change," he said. "But they must learn, mustn't they?" Dr. Hester said, "Our 3 guests have been sleeping in the loft, Caspar. They'll have to sleep at the main room while you're here." She paused. "How long do you think you'll stay?" Just a night or 2, said Caspar. His face took on a serious note. "I'm on a particular mission this time, heading for the city." "The city?" thought Lena. "What city?" The doctor echoed her thought. "The city?" she said. "Why in the world would you go there?" She seemed astonished. It was as if she'd never heard before of anyone going to the city. "Because of this particular mission," Caspar said, "of a secret nature." Ooh. You like that? Don't look the book. He's looking the book. Here we go. "I see," said Dr. Hester. "All right, then. It's nearly time to eat. Take your beast down to the barn and then come on in." That night, Caspar talked a great deal about his exploits as a roamer. "In the northern forest lands," he said, "I came upon some old cabins that still had glass in the windows. It was quite a trick to get the glass out without breaking it. Took 4 days, but I managed. Did cut my hand a bit." He extended his large hand and pointed out a tiny scar in the palm. "Quite a lot of blood from that. Then, up near Hogmarsh, I found a very valuable item." He gazed around at them, smiling slightly. "What was it?" asked Torrin, who had forgotten for the moment to be mad at his brother. "An ancient statue," said Caspar. "It depicts some very rare sort of bird with a long neck and only 1 leg. You could see that it was once painted pink." He paused to let the wonder of this sink in. "What is it, everybody?" Right, a pink flamingo. Pink, tink, stink, said Poppy. Pinky stinky. She stared at Casper and giggled. Hush, Poppy, said Lena. Then in Ardenwood, Casper went on, idly twisting his tiny mustache, I had to fend off a few bandits. Bandits? Cried Torn. Really? Well, they might as well have been bandits, Casper said. Turned out they had no weapons, but they were set on stealing from me, that's for sure. I got rid of them fast with a few well-placed lashes. Casper sliced his arm through the air as if he were cracking a whip. And a good thing, too, he went on, because not far from there, I located another special thing. Several boxes of authentic, pre-disaster artificial flowers. They are made of very fine cloth, hardly faded at all. Artificial flowers, said Lena, wondering why the people of Sparks would want fake flowers when they had real ones growing everywhere. Yes, said Casper, I have a sort of knack for finding unusual things. Maddie didn't join much in the conversation. Once Mrs. Murdo, being polite, asked her if she too enjoyed being a roamer, but she only smiled a little and said, I don't mind it. There are worse things to be. Mrs. Murdo waited to hear about the worst things, but it seemed that was all she was going to say. When it was bedtime, Casper went into the loft and Torrin dashed up after him. Maddie took Torrin's place in the medicine room, saying a brief good night and closing the door firmly after her. The doctor helped Lena and Mrs. Murdo make up beds of pads and blankets on the couch and on the floor. It sounds interesting to be a roamer, Lena said. And it would to her, wouldn't it? Because remember, Lena was a messenger back in the city of Ember, and she liked to run around all over the city, so it would make sense that she'd like to be a roamer. Davey's a sight. I suppose so, said the doctor. And Caspar has a special knack for finding things. The doctor bent over and spoke softly into Lena's ear. He has a knack for finding the wrong things, she said. He's always bringing loads of things people already have and not finding the things people really need. Artificial flowers, she said wearily. What are we going to do with artificial flowers? The bed being made up, she went around the room and blew out all the candles but one. He's always been a bit odd, said the doctor. Looks as if he's gotten even odder since he was last here. He tries hard, though. You can say that for him. He has high ambitions. He wants to be a famous roamer. He doesn't know that he's a bit famous already among the other roamers, but not famous the way he'd like. She handed the last candle to Lena and stumped off to her room. The next day was strange and unpleasant. Casper sat in the big armchair telling stories about his adventures, while Torrin hovered around him asking questions. Lena listened for a while. She was curious about this work of roaming. It sounded exciting, like something she might want to do herself. But she soon got bored because it seemed to her that Casper never said much about the really interesting parts of his adventures. She wanted to hear what the faraway places were like, and how the old buildings looked, and everything that was in the buildings. But all Casper talked about was how brave and clever he'd been to find the things he found, and what injuries he'd suffered in finding them. Maddie didn't listen to Casper. She spent most of her time in the courtyard or the garden, motionless and silent, gazing at the plants, her arms folded across her wide waist. Every now and then she plucked a leaf or a blossom, rubbed it between her fingers, and sniffed it. Once she asked Lena what a certain plant was. I'm not sure, said Lena. I only know a few of them. Then you know more than I do, said Maddie, flashing Lena an unexpected smile. But other than that, she said almost nothing to anyone. She didn't seem angry or unhappy, just off in her own world. Lena wondered about her, but felt too shy to ask questions. After a while, Casper shooed Torrin away, sat down at the table, and pulled some scraps of paper from his pocket. He spread them out and bent over them, and his jovial, boastful manner changed. He ran his finger along the lines of writing on the papers. He wrote on them with a stubby pencil, and as he did so, he frowned and muttered and mumbled to himself words that sounded like nonsense to Lena, except for an occasional string of numbers. 3578, he would say. Honest, that's what it says. 44209. She wandered up behind him and tried to look over his shoulder. After all, she had experience with torn documents, right? And hard to decipher bits of writing. But Casper twisted around and scowled at her, holding his hands over the papers. Private, private, keep away, he said. He wouldn't let Torrin see either, so Torrin sat on the window seat and sulked. About mid-afternoon, the doctor rushed in the door, looking even more frazzled than usual. Her shirt was smudged with blood, and her shirt tails were half tucked in and half out. I'm out of clean bandages, she said. Lena, did you do them? I need some. And I need that lavender extract, a bottle of it. No, I better get 2 bottles. She hurried into the medicine room. Lena had forgotten all about the bandages. She dashed into the kitchen, pulled some rags from the basket, and tore them into strips. She took these to the doctor, who was on her knees rummaging through a chest. And, said the doctor, I'm going to have to make some mustard plasters tonight. You'll need to go out into the orchard and gather me some mustard flowers. I'll need a lot. Sounds like there's some kind of an accident, doesn't it? Get the leaves, too, and the roots. I want the whole plant. She found her bottles of oil, thrust them into her bag along with the bandages, and rushed out the door again. Lena felt her spirits sink down into her shoes. She didn't want to gather mustard plants. It was too hot. It was ferociously hot. She was sick of being hot, having her neck damp beneath her long hair and her clothes sticking to her back. She was sick of doing chores. She shuffled out into the courtyard, where a few of the doctor's seedlings were drying up in their pots. She trudged to the pump, filled a bucket, and splashed some water on each limp plant. Then she sat down in the shade of the grapevine and leaned against the wall beneath the window and thought about everything that was wrong. Uh-oh, this is not good, sounding depressed. She was mad at the doctor for giving her so much work to do and hardly noticing when she did it. She was mad at Mrs. Murdo for not moving them out to the Pioneer Hotel. And she was lonely. She missed being with people she knew. Especially, she missed being with Dune in the old way. The way they'd been together than when they were partners in Ember. Now, he seemed to care more for his new friends than he did for her. Every time she thought about him, she felt a thud of pain, like a bruised place inside her. From the windows just above her head, Lena heard Casper's voice. Not now, he said. I have to do some planning. I need quiet. The door opened and Torrance stamped out. He threw a furious glance at Lena but didn't speak. He ran through the gate and up the road. He's mad too, thought Lena. Everyone's mad. Yeah. From inside, she heard Casper's voice again, startlingly near. She was talking to Maddie, who must have come in the kitchen door. Lena realized they were standing by the window just behind her. We'll head out day after tomorrow, said Casper, starting early. Uh-huh, said Maddie in her low, growly voice. All those stories about germs still lurking there, Caspar said. They're nonsense, you know. Those germs died out long ago. No doubt you're right, said Maddie. They were talking about the city. Lena sat very still and listened harder. People talk about other kinds of dangers there too, Caspar went on. Bandits and so on. Doesn't bother me. Of course not, Maddie said. And anyway, even if there is danger, said Caspar, it's worth the risk because of what we're going to find. You sound very sure that we're going to find it, said Maddie. Of course I'm sure, said Caspar. Aren't you? The answer to this was just a grunt, like, They moved away from the window, and their voices grew fainter. Maddie spoke next. Lena couldn't hear all of what she said, but she caught the words, how far? And in Casper's answer, she heard the words, day's journey. Okay, anybody predicting? If Brandon was listening, you'd be up and your hand would be waving you down your seat like, What do you think? What's your prediction? I have one. I think Lena's going to follow them. Then she heard steps clomping up the stairs to the loft, and the room went quiet. Lena sat very still. Her bad mood faded. Other thoughts swirled in her mind. She was remembering the sparkling city whose picture she had drawn so many times, the great city of light, the city she had always believed in. Now Caspar was planning to go there. It wasn't dangerous anymore. It was only a day's journey away. She knew, of course, that the city Caspar was talking about had been damaged, like everything else, in the disaster. The beautiful, shining city she had imagined must have been the city in the past, in the time before the disaster. In her mind, she revised her vision of the city. Some of the high towers would have toppled, and the windows would be broken. Stones from ruined buildings would have fallen into the street. Roofs would have caved in. But the idea that struck her was this: maybe the people of Ember were meant to restore the city. Perhaps their great job, the reason they had come up into this new world, was to live in the city and rebuild it, so that once again it was the glorious, shining city of Lena's vision. This was such a beautiful idea. That night she lay in bed thinking about it, and the more she thought, the more sure she was, and the more excited. Next chapter, which is tomorrow, chapter 13, called Taking Action. And the sentence is pretty long. One evening, Dune wandered off by himself toward the far corner of the hotel, where the trees grew thickly and the undergrowth beneath them was dense. We'll find out more tomorrow. Have a good rest of the day, everybody.